Good morning and welcome to Your Voice on the Hill. I'm McHale Hewardine and I would like to welcome you to this live broadcast. The 2019 Utah State Legislative Session is now finished and our local representatives have earned a well-deserved break, but not quite yet for our representative Mike McHale, who's joining us today. Thanks for being with us today.
It's good to be here and it's good to be done.
I'm sure you're ready to get back to your regular life and routine. I hear that you're training for something right now. Is it a marathon?
You caught me off guard. I am training for a marathon. I have a marathon in the end of April.
That's awesome. How did you balance that?
Very carefully. I did run during the session. I had a busy, I chair higher education and lots of bills I worked on, and we're going to talk about things we did. But during the session, I continued to train, and it was tough, but I made it work somehow.
That's awesome. So let's jump right in with a review of the whole legislative session. So how many bills were presented, and then how many were passed?
Okay, so just as an overview review, and I've got the numbers in front of me because I knew you were going to ask me that. So we meet every year. We meet for 45 days, and that's in our Utah Constitution. It's statutory. So on Thursday night at midnight, we had to finish. So I've served 7 years now, and for the first time in my 7 years, we actually finished early. I mean, it was shockingly early.
That deserves a round of applause.
It does. We finished 45 minutes early. It was 11:15, and we were done.
Wow.
So when I say early, we were still there well beyond. After we finished, we have a program, and we were still there till about 2 in the morning. But we did finish the state's work at 11:15. So let's go into the numbers. So this year, I brought it with me. There were 1,338 requests to open up a bill file. Some of those bills are resolutions. Some of those are actual bills. Sometimes there was a resolution recognizing the city of Orem. There was a resolution recognizing our economic relationship with Taiwan. So about 10% of our bills are actually resolutions. So of those, 547 were opened by the House. 295 were opened by the Senate, and of the bills requested, 43% of those passed.
Wow.
So we did pass a fair number of bills, 574. Resolutions almost always pass because it's not actual law. We recognize, again, the city of Orem, our relationship with Taiwan. So about 100 of the bills passed were not actual bills. They were just resolutions.
Okay. Were there any surprises from the session?
I think there's always surprises from the session. We had a huge tax bill that came in at the last 2 weeks of the session. That was a surprise to me. I knew we were working on tax reform, but the proposal, when it came out, I was kind of surprised by the proposal. I know we talked about this in the past. I didn't like the bill. I didn't like the proposal. I think we clearly have a structural imbalance in our budget. There's things we need to do to improve that. I didn't like the direction of that bill. It kind of caught me off guard, and the reality is it caught the public off guard. I got lots and lots of emails, lots of phone calls, and that's the process where we're up there in a transparent setting, and we heard from the public, and in the end that bill was stalled out. It didn't pass. We formed a task force to look at tax reform. We're going to do that. We're going to do that in the off season and see if we can come up with something better than what we saw during the legislative session.
Okay, so you guys will just continue to work on it, massage it out, make sure
hopefully
everything.
Yes.
Yeah, so people are happy with it. Okay.
Yes.
Are there any bills or direction that you think that the state can be proud of?
I think I brought some of our funding. And I'll jump into some bills, but some of the things I think we can be the most proud of. We did give a raise to our state employees. You've seen the economy go up, and salaries really haven't followed. So all of our state employees across the board received a 2.8% increase. We saved about $100 million. The state of Utah actually has a rainy day fund, so we have a big savings account. We put another $95 million into that savings account. I'm really proud we did that. We allocated another $250 million to ongoing education needs. So we have what's called a WPU. It's weighted pupil unit, and it doesn't translate straight across the board. One student is one WPU, but that's kind of the concept. We increased that funding again by 4%, which is a big increase. Right, the big winners on Capitol Hill this year clearly was public education, higher education, which I chair. I think they had a good year on Capitol Hill, but really public education continues to be a priority for the legislature, and I think they clearly were the big winners this legislative session.
Okay. Are there any other key budget items you'd like to go over, or any facts about it?
Oh, let's have some fun. I've got numbers in front of me now, so let's run through a couple of them. So, state budget. Any idea how high our state budget is? Trivia question?
I do not.
Okay, so 2020, our budget will be $18.5 billion. That's what the state is. And the important thing is that is an $18.5 billion balanced budget. So unlike the federal government, we balance our budget. We did that again. I think we should all be proud of that. I think I mentioned $95 million went into rainy day fund, $250 million into public education fund. We funded 4 buildings this legislative session. We spent a lot of time talking about STEM education, science, engineering, math. We did that. Weber State has got the NORDA Engineering and Applied Science building was funded. That's about $50 million. Dixie State University Science building, about $50 million, and Utah Valley University, a little bit different. It's a new business building, $50 million. We have issues. Our college campuses are swelling, and we need classroom space, especially down in Dixie State. Mm-hmm. We've reviewed some of their needs, and that was a good one to get funded. At the Capitol complex itself, we funded a building, $110 million. Our state office building that sits behind the Capitol is old, and it's got a lot of issues, and we're going to renovate that, and that's coming forward. But let me tell you about the local ones that I think are important as well. I know I'm rambling on a little bit here,
good.
but I know we've talked about it in the past. We had an appropriation request for Woodland Hills City. They've got to build a retention basin where they think they may have mudslides because of the fires. I did get the legislature to approve a direct funding request to Woodland Hills for $650,000, and that I think that'll help. That was in the budget. We got near the very end of the legislative session, and we heard that Elk Ridge had some needs in the final 2 weeks. We were able to get Elk Ridge $250,000 as well. I think that'll help them. And I think there's kind of an exciting one in Utah County, the airport.
Oh, yeah.
We looked at the bond. We have a transportation bond with projects, and every couple of years we look at that bond and we reallocate. And in that reallocation, we were able to get some funding for the Provo Airport, $9 million. You probably saw that Utah County is going to chip in some money, and Provo's involved, and we're gonna try to expand the Provo Airport. I mean, you don't want to drive to Salt Lake to fly, right? Nope,
not every time.
It'd be fantastic if our citizens down here in Utah County have a chance to fly out of Provo rather than having to go to Salt Lake. I know we have some direct routes to LA. Mm-hmm. We've got a direct route, I think, to San Francisco, but it'd be nice to expand that out of Provo. I mean, we're a booming community. We're at
constantly growing. Yeah,
about 600,000 people.
That's crazy.
Numbers say we're going to exceed Salt Lake County, and it's time to see some of that infrastructure down here. I did see in our transportation bond $35 million for an off-ramp down near Payson. We're still working on our off-ramp near the new hospital here in Spanish Fork, but there was some funding for the off-ramp down near Payson, which I think they need as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, that was a great review of that. Let's go into some specific bills.
Okay.
Let's start with the Medicaid expansion.
Okay, Medicaid expansion did pass. We changed that a little bit. That was voted on by voters, and I think we acknowledged what voters wanted to do. We changed that a little bit. Again, we have some constraints. We have to balance our budget every year, and what was voted on by voters would have created an issue with our budget moving forward with our constitutional mandate to balance that. So we scaled it back a little bit, but not significantly. We did it in a way that our budget was balanced and we could move forward. So that passed, that moved forward.
Okay, awesome. Now the abortion bill.
Okay, we did pass the abortion bill, and it's been fun to review these. You and I have been reviewing these as we've gone through the process, and in the end, the Senate had a lengthy debate on the abortion bill, banning or restricting abortions after 18 weeks unless there's a concern for the health safety of the mother or the child. That did pass. That was a bill that was hotly contested. I think the state of Arkansas passed a very, very similar bill. It's highly likely that our bill in Arkansas will be litigated. That'll probably go to the Supreme Court. We'll see what that looks like as it moves forward.
And that was Senator Henderson's bill, correct?
I believe she was the floor sponsor.
Okay.
So the way this works is you've got a chief sponsor, somebody who opens the bill. So that was opened by Representative Acton in the House.
Okay.
And then I believe Senator Henderson had carried that legislation as the floor sponsor in the Senate.
Okay.
It was a good bill. I supported that. Obviously, Senator Henderson supported that, and it got a lot of support in the legislature.
Okay, so is that the same case with the Senate 188, the public exams bill?
Senate Bill 188, I think Senator Henderson was actually one of the co-sponsors. That dealt with pelvic exams. I think we talked about that last week where women, through other procedures, they were having pelvic exams, and that's something that we restricted. And I was actually surprised to learn that was an issue at all. That's something that should never happen. I know that passed in the House, so that's moving forward.
Okay. I know this one is a little bit controversial, the hate crimes bill. Did that pass?
That did pass, and in the end, I don't think there was a lot of controversy.
Really?
The legislation is something that the Senate has worked on for years and years, and some of the legislation was scaled back. You probably saw that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints came in and was, instead of opposing the legislation, worked with Bill's sponsor, worked with the public to come up with something that was a little bit different and something that more folks could support. That came to the House. We included some political speech in that as well. Some folks didn't like that. Some of the advocates that wanted the legislation to pass, they weren't super thrilled about that, but it felt appropriate in the House. In the end, that passed by overwhelming margins. I believe there were over 60 votes in favor. I think 62 votes in favor of that legislation. I supported that ultimately in the end. There's just no reason we should ever target an entire class, an entire group. I mean, similar to our laws, if a police officer is shot and killed, there's a stepped up penalty, and that's kind of the same concept we see with hate crimes.
Okay. Awesome. What about the higher education?
Okay, so I carried one of the bills that I carried was the base budget for higher education, which was about $1.9 billion. Higher education was a big winner on Capitol Hill this year, and not just higher education, but education in general. Some of the things we did for higher education I think is kind of exciting is we tied a lot of their dollars to performance. So we tied $27 million of new money to performance. So we have some matrix, some guidelines that we want them to meet. We want them to retain students, and we want them to help with student graduation. And we tied a lot of dollars to graduation and performance because we want to see some really good improvement. Over the last 8 years, the University of Utah has taken their graduation rate all the way to 70%. It's been very, very impressive. And it'd be nice to see that happen at all of our institutions. Some other money that we put in the budget, President Wyatt down at Southern Utah University wants to have a three-year degree program, and in a lot of institutions you can get a degree in 3 years, but it's really difficult for engineering or some of these science-related subjects. So he's built a program where if you want to become an engineer, that typically in any institution takes 4 years, he's built a program to do that in 3 years. The big concern is how do we provide value to our students? How do we get them in the workforce as quickly as possible? So we funded that. We also funded an engineering initiative, $5 million. There's a group of a whole consortium of companies in Utah that have said we need more and more engineers, and if you'll fund some additional dollars for engineering, we'll match that. So some of those dollars that we funded for our engineering initiative have a direct match from companies across the state, especially in Utah County up in the north and Silicon Slopes, and it's really positive. They came in, they reported, they showed us the number of jobs they've created, and they're doing well.
That's awesome. I know from a student's perspective, sometimes it feels like the universities just want to hold on, don't let go, you know. But that's awesome. That's going to help a lot of students.
And we're changing that. We don't want universities to hold on to students. We want to get them through
the workforce.
We want to get them qualified, trained as quickly as possible.
Okay, that's awesome. Speaking of students, what happened with the college tuition help for low-income students?
So I got lots of questions about this when the session started moving forward.
I know Senator Henderson also did as well. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of questions. One of the big concern was, legislature, what are you doing with the Regent Scholarship? Don't change it. We've relied upon it. We want to move forward with our kids. A lot of parents know what the requirements are, and they've lined out their student schedule, and based on that, we didn't change the Regent Scholarship. We added a little additional money to the Regent Scholarship, but we also added $2 million of additional money to low-income kids to try to send them to college as well. You've got your Perkins loans, you've got your Pell grants, and we also have another $2 million in the budget. It's probably not enough right now, but as we go down that road, it's good to start a program and make sure we do it right before we put in additional dollars.
Okay, awesome. I know one that parents would like to hear about most likely is the school fees.
Right,
bill.
right. And Senator Henderson actually went to Florida, but that was something that she worked on, bringing much more transparency to student fees, making sure that, in our Constitution it says that our public education is something that the state of Utah will provide. I mean, the idea is it's supposed to be free, and all of our viewers know, public education is not free, but we've taken a hard look at the fees. The senator she is the chair of public education in the Senate, and she's worked really hard to bring those fees down and make sure that the system itself absorbs fees, so opportunities are available to all students, not just the students where their parents have a little more money to spend.
Okay.
So.
Moving on a little bit away from that topic, let's talk about the alcohol legislation.
Okay. Alcohol legislation, we had a couple bills, and there was a proposal. I guess the big proposal, I think what most people have seen in the news is right now, if you were to buy beer in a grocery store, the amount of alcohol is restricted to 3.2%, and the legislature, there was a proposal to change that to 4.8%, and in the end there was a grand compromise, and the compromise was 4%. So they didn't get to 4.8, it didn't stay at 3.2%, it's going to move to 4%. The concerns for the advocates that were pushing for the 4.8% is there's very few states now that produce 3.2% beer and availability to the market. We're going to be one of only 2 states to do that, and the concern is having options for people who want to drink beer in Utah. So in the end, that passed. I think it was a good compromise. I supported that legislation. While I don't drink, I don't think the state needs to. I think the state needs to provide that to those that do. And the compromise I think was fine in the end.
Okay. A little bit along the same vein as the tobacco bill, raising the age to 21.
Right. So the tobacco age was raised to 21. That's been a big concern in the legislature, and really where that concern came forward is with e-cigarettes. We have seen our teen use spike in very significant ways. You could go down to Spanish Fork High School or any high school in the state, and you'll see that there are kids that are vaping that shouldn't be, and you've got 18-year-old kids, 17-year-old kids have 18 and 19-year-old friends that are buying them these products, and in the end the change to 21 was actually supported. It surprised me that was actually supported by the tobacco industry itself and the tobacco lobby. I didn't think I'd ever, you asked me about surprises. I never thought I'd see the day when the tobacco industry itself would come in and say, you know what, it probably should go up, and we did that, and we'll see. Time will only tell if that was a positive step, and if we'll see.
Okay, awesome. Shows some responsibility from the tobacco industry.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the public defense for kids and teens.
Okay, so that was Senate Bill 32, and we actually passed that on the last day or two of the session. I carried that again. The chief sponsor was Senator Todd Weiler from Bountiful. Todd and I have worked for a long period of time trying to make sure that the Constitution guarantees you a constitutional defense and a right to have counsel. But what we've seen is we've really stepped up the charges on a lot of our youth in a really negative way. Some pretty serious criminal charges, and a lot of these youth have not had attorneys. We looked at the data a few years ago, and the average kid in the juvenile justice system was in the system for upwards of 3 years on average. And I think that's shocking. I think that's inappropriate. I think if kids fail, let's find a way to fix the issue and get them out of the system. Keeping them in the system oftentimes creates more problems. So we had a bill that would provide some additional funding for public defense of those kids, and we got that passed. I think that was positive. We had a good debate on the House floor. We've also provided that if you're a 17-year-old young man, you father a child, and you're going to put that child up for adoption. That's a serious decision in life. That will also provide an attorney for you in that circumstance, and that became an issue that was debated on the House floor, and ultimately in the wisdom of the legislature, they felt like it was appropriate that that 17-year-old young man would have an attorney advising him of his rights and what it means to terminate your parental rights. And I think that's positive. I think that makes I think that's a common sense approach. And I'm really proud that we did that. I think we have some constitutional protections that are significant, and I'm glad we got that taken care of.
Okay, that sounds great. Moving on, let's talk about the changes to the initiative process.
Okay, and this is something, I know we talked about this a little bit with Senator Henderson. Those bills did pass. I think her big concern, and I agree with her, is when we look at these initiatives on the ballot, we ought to have initiatives. The public, there's no reason the legislature should be afraid of the public. We should engage the public. And what some of the changes we made that were significant is now we get to tell the public what the impact of those initiatives are. I think folks were surprised with Medicaid expansion to learn that was a tax increase of almost $100 million. When people ask me, well, do you support it or not, I'd always ask, well, do you support a $100 million tax increase? And some of that information, not some of it, all of that information needs to be transparent. And what you'll see as far as a change is our legislative analysts that analyze all of our bills and create a fiscal note. That idea that we're going to provide a financial transparency, voters will get to see that, and they'll get to make better decisions. So I think those are some important changes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. The last one that I have on my list is the homeless bill.
Right, and we did a little bit of work there. We put in some additional money. We have made a lot of positive progress in the Rio Grande area, downtown Salt Lake. If you were to go there today versus 3 years ago, it's an entirely different world. I know we allocated another $100,000 to continue to do another round of cleanup, and it's looking better and better. We're doing more. In the past, we provided some dollars for some housing for the mothers with children down in the Rio Grande. So that's happening, and I think that's really positive.
Okay, let's take a short break. We'll be back in a few minutes.
The city of Spanish Fork needs your help in preventing sewer backups. Flushing the wrong things down the toilet can cause expensive plumbing problems in your home, business, and for the city. Do not flush paper towels, cleaning wipes, baby wipes, facial tissues, diapers, or feminine hygiene products down the toilet. These products don't easily break down, are resistant to degradation, and can hang up in pipes. At our sewage pumping stations, Public Works employees have to spend extra time and money removing trash from our sewers. Labels may say flushable, but disposable products are clogging our sewer pipes and damaging pumps and equipment. For more information, visit our website or call 801-804-4541. Save yourself and the sewer utility from a pain in the drain. Put disposable wipes, rags, and towels in the trash, not the toilet.
In the scope of a lifetime, 10 minutes may seem like no time at all. But when it comes to suicide, 10 minutes is often long enough to reconsider the decision to end one's own life. If you have a friend or family member who is struggling with suicide or depression, talk to them about temporarily storing their firearms away from their home, because even a 10-minute delay can make a lifetime of difference. Let's help end tragic firearm deaths in Utah.
Spanish Fork is a great city to live in. Matter of fact, we were named the 3rd safest city in the state. But that doesn't mean that crime doesn't happen. Sometimes we are the guilty ones. We make it easy for the bad guys to commit crimes against us. An open car is the easiest way for someone to get into your garage and then into your home. Your belongings are only as safe as you secure them. Be smart and lock your vehicle. Don't be guilty of making crime easy.
The lawsuit, you go back to the tobacco litigation,
Welcome back to Your Voice on the Hill. We are here with Representative Mike McHale. We were just discussing some of the more specific topics that were addressed during this legislative session. Let's get back to the conversation.
Okay.
Now that the gavel has dropped on this year's session, so to speak, what happens next?
So what happens next is I go home and get a lot of sleep, okay?
I'm sure.
So we still have a lot of work to do in the legislature. I think the big bill, what happens next, the tax bill, we talked about it a little bit before. That was House Bill 441. We created a task force to look at our tax structure in Utah. We are a very good state. We are very well managed. Rich states, poor states, every year they do an analysis of states. We're always ranked. We've been ranked number one the last 11 years in a row. So we do smart things, but we do have some structural imbalances. So we're going to have a task force. They're going to meet all throughout the summer. They're going to spend some time. They're going to come back with a recommendation the end of the year, and we may go into special session to consider some changes. We may not. We may wait for the next legislative session. So that's going to happen. Other things that are going to happen that are interesting. So we meet at least every month in what we call interim. Okay. And we review our budgets. We review reports from all of our different state agencies. So, for example, where I chair higher education, I'll have some interim meetings where I bring in universities. We'll look at some of the funding sources, some of the programs that we've funded, and they'll have to come before the legislature with a report, and they'll come back and say, this is how we've been using those dollars. This is what we've done. Here's our success. Here's some things that we've learned, and that'll happen, and that happens across the board in every spectrum. So Senator Henderson, where she chairs public education, she'll see some of those reports. We spend a lot of time. I've got other committees that I serve on where things happen throughout the year. One of the committees I serve on is our International Relations Committee. So we host dignitaries in Utah. That's something that I've got to get involved with. It's kind of fun. For example, on the 27th of March, the Undersecretary to the United Nations is coming to Utah, and we're going to host her, Allison Somali. We're going to host her. Utah Valley University is going to host her. I think she's going to speak at Utah Valley University, but the Senate President and Speaker, we're going to have a dinner for her up in Salt Lake, and I get to be part of that. I think that's fun. In August, we're going to have another United Nations. They're going to come here. We've got a program with them as well. So things are happening, and
things keep moving.
They do. They keep moving.
Awesome. Let's look forward. What are some of the upcoming issues and challenges that we as a state might face?
I think the big challenges that we continue to face is infrastructure. I've been in the legislature for 7 years now, and driving to the Capitol this year was more difficult than ever before. I actually go home every night, and it was difficult because of our road. There's a lot of construction that's happening right now. Our state has grown well beyond 3 million people now. Mm-hmm. When I was first elected, our state budget was about $12 billion. Now we're $18.5 billion. We have seen a tremendous, incredible economic growth in the last 10 years, and how do we keep up? How do we stay competitive? And those are the questions we continue to answer. You know, water is a resource we can't just develop. There's a limited amount of water. Transportation is a big issue, a very, very big issue. It's a big issue down here in Spanish Fork. You've probably seen this last week. They had another ceremony for the new hospital in Spanish Fork. They put in the big beam for the hospital, and we've got problems down on Highway 6. There's a lot of traffic. It's only going to get worse. We've got an off ramp that we need to build down by the hospital, and those are some issues that we keep watching. You know, this summer I'm going to watch Woodland Hills closely. I worry about, you know, you've got 12 to 20 inches of ash and potential flooding, and well, you know, we've got to stay vigilant. Okay, well, that's great. Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation this morning. I want to thank Representative Mike McHale for all the time he's been here and being with us. We do appreciate all that our local representatives do for our community and state. And to the people of Spanish Fork, thanks for watching.